Hello, Mr. Adam. Hello, Mido. How are you today?
I'm fine. What about you?
I'm fine. What topic are you going to talk about today?
Tell me, what do you want?
You told us before about the sea, and also about life in the seas, and told us about a lot of information about the seas. You also gave us information about planet Earth. Today, what if we talked about the moon above us?
Yes, wonderful.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Oh my god, we're on the moon now.
Yes. The moon is one of the most recognizable objects in the solar system. This proximity to Earth has given it immeasurable cultural significance and means it plays a key role in Earth's tides. Earth's moon is the only place beyond Earth where humans have set foot. Yes. The brightest and largest object in our night sky, the moon makes Earth a more livable planet by moderating our home planet's wobble on its axis, leading to a relatively stable climate. It also causes tides, creating a rhythm that has guided humans for thousands of years. The moon was likely formed after a Mars-sized body collided with Earth. Earth's moon is the fifth largest of the 200-plus moons orbiting planets in our solar system. Earth's only natural satellite is simply called the moon, because people didn't know other moons existed until Galileo Galilei discovered 4 moons orbiting Jupiter in 1610.
How big is the moon?
The moon is a little over a quarter the size of the Earth, with a circumference of 10,917 kilometers around the equator and a radius, the distance from the core of the moon to the surface, of just 1,737 kilometers. In relation to Earth, the moon is much larger than would be expected, and this is thought to be due to how the moon formed.
How cold is the moon?
There is almost no atmosphere on the moon, which means it cannot trap heat or insulate the surface. In full sunshine, temperatures on the moon reach 127 degrees Celsius, way above boiling point. There are 13.5 days of high temperatures followed by 13.5 days of darkness, and once the sun goes down, the temperature in the bottom of craters can plummet to minus 173 degrees Celsius. The moon has an atmosphere so tenuous as to be nearly vacuum, with a total mass of less than 10 tons, 9.8 long tons, 11 short tons. The surface pressure of this small mass is around 3 times 10-15 atm, 0.3 np. It varies with a lunar day. Its sources include outgassing and sputtering, a product of the bombardment of lunar soil by solar wind ions. Elements that have been detected include sodium and potassium, produced by sputtering, also found in the atmospheres of Mercury and Io, helium-4 and neon from the solar wind, and argon-40, radon-222, and polonium-210, outgassed after their creation by radioactive decay within the crust and mantle. The absence of such neutral species, atoms or molecules, as oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen and magnesium, which are present in the regolith, is not understood. Water vapor has been detected by Chandrayaan-1 and found to vary with latitude, with a maximum at 60-70 degrees. It is possibly generated from the sublimation of water ice in the regolith. These gases either return into the regolith because of the moon's gravity or are lost to space, either through solar radiation pressure or, if they are ionized, by being swept away by the solar wind's magnetic field. Studies of moon magma samples retrieved by the Apollo missions demonstrate that the moon had once possessed a relatively thick atmosphere for a period of 70 million years between 3 and 4 billion years ago. This atmosphere, sourced from gases ejected from lunar volcanic eruptions, was twice the thickness of that of present-day Mars. The ancient lunar atmosphere was eventually stripped away by solar winds and dissipated into space.
Is there water on the moon?
Due to its tilt, some parts of the moon's surface never see sunlight, allowing water ice to survive in some of its craters. When India's Chandrayaan-1 lunar orbiter passed over the north pole of the moon in 2009, it found more than 40 craters thought to contain water ice. This confirmed the finding from the previous year that found water ice on the southern pole. In addition, the moon contains some water trapped in its rocks.
Yes.
The moon was the first place beyond Earth humans tried to reach as the space age began in the late 1950s. More than 100 robotic explorers from more than half a dozen nations have since sent spacecraft to the moon. 9 crewed missions have flown to the moon and back. The former Soviet Union logged the first successes with its Luna program, starting with Luna 1 in 1959. NASA followed with a series of robotic Ranger and Surveyor spacecraft that performed increasingly complex tasks that made it possible for the first human beings to walk on the moon in 1969. 24 humans have traveled from the Earth to the moon. 12 walked on its surface. The last human visited the lunar surface in 1972. Now NASA is gearing up to set up a permanent lunar presence on the moon. The Artemis program will send the first woman and the next man to the moon and develop a sustainable human presence on the moon and set the stage for further human exploration at Mars. The program takes its name from the twin sister of Apollo and the goddess of the moon in Greek mythology. Artemis 1, formerly Exploration Mission 1, is the first in a series of increasingly complex missions that will enable human exploration of the moon and Mars.
How far from Earth is the moon?
The moon is orbiting Earth at an average distance of 384,400 kilometers, meaning it would take over 17 days non-stop to fly there on a commercial plane. Its orbit is not perfectly circular, but varies between 252,000 and 225,600 kilometers away. We tend to think it is closer than it actually is simply because it is the largest celestial object in the sky. Our lunar neighbor has inspired stories since the first humans looked up at the sky and saw its gray, cratered surface. Some observers saw among the craters the shape of a person's face, so stories refer to a mysterious man in the moon. Hungrier observers compared the craters to cheese and dreamed of an entire sphere made of delicious dairy products. The moon made its film debut in a 1902 black and white silent French film called Le Voyage dans la Lune, A Trip to the Moon. And a year before astronauts walked on the moon, 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968, told the story of astronauts on an outpost on the moon. Decades later, it is still widely regarded as one of the best science fiction movies ever made. American astronauts have planted 6 American flags on the moon. But that doesn't mean the United States has claimed it. In fact, an international law written in 1967 prevents any single nation from owning planets, stars, or any other natural objects in space.
How long is a day on the moon?
It takes 27 days for the moon to go around Earth and 27 days to rotate once on its axis. Because the moon is orbiting Earth at the same rate at which it rotates itself, this means that the same side of the moon always faces the Earth. This is known as synchronous rotation. Synchronous rotation is why some people call the side that never faces the planet the dark side of the moon. This is somewhat misleading, however, it is more correctly referred to as the far side of the moon. As the moon orbits the Earth, most of its surface is bathed in sunlight at some point.
Why are there so many impact craters on the moon?
The thin atmosphere leaves very little to protect the moon from asteroids. Early in the solar system's formation, all planets and moons were bombarded with rocks. The thin atmosphere on the moon has meant that the impact craters have remained prominent. Because the moon has no weather, there is effectively no erosion on the celestial body. For a long time, scientists thought that there was no atmosphere on the moon, but recent studies have confirmed that there is one. The very thin atmosphere, known as an exosphere, contains helium, argon, neon, ammonia, methane, and carbon dioxide. It also contains sodium and potassium, which are not usually found as gases in the atmospheres of Earth, Venus, or Mars. Where this atmosphere comes from is still not known. Some theories suggest that the solar winds and high-energy particles are stripping material from the surface of the moon, while others propose that evaporation of surface material might be involved or even meteor impacts. It could also be a combination of all of these effects.
Yes, wonderful.
Just like Earth, the moon can be divided into the crust, mantle, and core. At its very center, the moon has a solid iron core with a temperature of between 1,327 degrees Celsius and 1,427 degrees Celsius. This is hot enough to create a surrounding molten liquid iron outer core, but not hot enough to warm the surface. The mantle which envelops the core is roughly 1,000 kilometers thick. During the early history of the moon, this layer was once liquid magma and the source of the intense volcanic activity that led to the formation of the lava plains on its surface. As the magma cooled down, this process stopped. All of this is encased in a crust, made up largely of a rock called anorthosite, which is rich in oxygen, silicon, calcium, and aluminium. The surface is coated with lunar regolith, a fine mix of dust, broken rock, and material. While Earth's regolith is formed by erosion and weather, on the moon it all comes from meteor impacts as the surface is blasted into fine pieces. In some places, this lunar regolith is just 3 meters deep, while in others parts it has settled into drifts some 20 meters deep.
How does the moon cause the tides?
The gravitational pull of the moon causes the water on the nearest side of Earth to bulge outwards, resulting in a high tide. Curiously, it also causes the water on the other side of the Earth to bulge outwards. This is because the moon's gravity is not the only force acting on the planet's water, as Earth's own gravity also has to be taken into account. The resulting tidal force is stretching and squashing Earth, resulting in the water bulging on the two opposite sides of the planet.
How many times have people landed on the moon?
All 6 human moon landings to date have been part of NASA's Apollo program, which ran between 1961 and 1972. After the momentous achievement of Apollo 11, landing Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon on the 20th of July 1969, the USA landed 5 more missions up to 1972. 12 people in total have walked on the surface of the moon. During these missions, the astronauts collected samples, conducted science experiments, explored the landscape in a buggy, and even played golf. Since then, no one has been back to the moon, although there are frequent proposals to return.
I already mentioned this to you in my talk. Yes, I seem to have lost focus a bit. I look hungry.
Yes, me too.
Let's go down to Earth and have dinner.
Okay, let's go down.